Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again, this time around, Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode Intermission Review, exclusively for the PlayStation 5. A little over 1 year after the official release of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and now we get the opportunity to play as one of the most lovable characters in the history of the Final Fantasy franchise, an optional character from the original game, Yuffie Kisaragi, and a piece of DLC costing $20 that happens from a narrative perspective shortly after the bombing mission of Mako Reactor 5. We actually get a few cameos from the likes of Barrett and Tifa, Jesse, Biggs, Wedge. They all show up one way or another, even Johnny. But the majority of the cast is brand new. The focal point is brand new, especially when it comes to Yuffie and her exuberant animated presentation. And that actually flows into the gameplay as well, because Yuffie is a very electrifying character to play as. With her shuriken, you can actually throw her weapon of choice at an enemy, retrieve it, and go in for physical attacks. Or you can throw the shuriken and actually let it stay on the enemy for a short period of time while it deals damage, and you can perform either physical attacks or magic or abilities depending on how many bars are in your current ATB bar. The gameplay is rooted in what we've seen in the previous Final Fantasy VII Remake when it comes to the active time battle system, when it comes to the ability to utilize items and spells via that ATB bar, and the overall ability to combo attacks, both physical and magical, if done properly. The thing that really makes this game a lot different from Final Fantasy VII Remake in terms of gameplay is the fact that you can only control Yuffie. You do get an ally in Sonar, but Sonar is strictly AI controlled, though you can dictate commands, such as telling him to do abilities that he has in his repertoire, or cast magic attacks. You can also change his equipment. The biggest draw when it comes to the gameplay in regards to Yuffie and Sonar teaming up is synergy. By hitting the left trigger, you're able to synchronize their attacks. Though it does more damage when they're attacking by themselves, synergy actually costs time when it comes to building up the ATB bar. So if you want to do those synchronized, synergized abilities, a lot of the time being synergized will not allow you to do it as quickly as you would if you were just fighting with Yuffie and giving out commands to Sonar. But the damage output can be so great that at times synergy is the way to go if you're doing it properly, if you're paying attention to what's going on. And you will have to pay attention, because to me, this is actually a lot more difficult of a presentation than the original Final Fantasy VII Remake fights, considering the fact that you are at level 25 when the narrative starts. And you of course can go up to level 50 just like you could in the original remake version. You can also max out your materia and upgrade your weapons, and you will have to do that because these enemies hit hard, they hit fast, and a lot of the times it is better to block and guard and try to parry than roll out of the way, as I've discovered multiple times, because these enemies can track your movements very well and home in and hit you very hard before you even know it, and then of course you have to restart the battle. The narrative, if you're just playing straight through, will take you probably between 3 to 4 hours to complete. But there is actually a lot of stuff to do for such a small package, including the reimagining of the Fort Condor minigame defense battle system that was seen in the original Final Fantasy. This both dumbs down the overall presentation while presenting a new form of gameplay when it comes to Fort Condor battles that is rooted in a red beats green, green beats blue, blue beats red kind of system, where you're utilizing cards that move across a stage, an arena, a battlefield, with the intent of knocking out both outposts and the home base while keeping your outpost and home base alive and well. Now, if the home base goes down first, that is the end of the game for whatever team that home base was lost. But if you're able to survive and nobody's lost an outpost and nobody's lost a home base, when the time expires, it runs into sudden death. So whatever outpost goes down first or whatever home base goes down first, that is the loser. And it can be a harrowing, intense experience playing Fort Condor. I had a blast playing this over and over again, even when I lost, especially when it came to the higher, more difficult enemies. With Yuffie Shuriken, you can actually traverse certain areas. You can hit switches, destroy boxes from long range, and that plays into another mini game where you can destroy a bunch of boxes in a time limit. The VR missions also return via Chadley, as he puts you up against the God of Lightning, or even some extra battles after you beat the game. There's also a hard mode that you can take part in, just like in the original Final Fantasy Remake, after you beat the game, no matter what difficulty. And that will of course present an incredible challenge, especially considering the fact that you are playing for a short period of time by yourself. Overall, there's actually a lot to enjoy about this DLC, from the explosive combat to the great mini games, to the enemy variations that can definitely be difficult, to just having Yuffie finally in Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's highly enjoyable, especially for the lovers of Final Fantasy VII. I know people will of course kind of scoff at the idea that we're paying $20 for an expansion of something that really could have been a part of the original Final Fantasy VII Remake, and or part 2 of what will come with the Final Fantasy VII Remake sequel. But if you enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you enjoyed the world, if you enjoyed the gameplay, if you enjoyed the idea of expanded mini games from the original game, I say it's definitely well worth your money. You will have a good amount of time with it, especially if you try to get all of the trophies, if you try to find all the collectibles, and of course if you try to defeat the game on hard mode. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again, Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode Intermission Review, exclusively for the PlayStation 5. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to go back. I might even play the original Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I was holding back on trying to beat the game on hard mode. I think this has given me the incentive to not only do that, but also do it on the DLC. And if I get slaughtered by some kind of gigantic ostrich, or even on the battlefield of Fort Condor, I guess I'll have no choice but to say, oh lordy.